March is the quiet turning of the wheel, a month caught between winter's retreat and spring's arrival. The earth is awakening, though ever so slowly up here in the north, stretching out of its slumber with cautious steps. While I eagerly wait for the tasty spring fungi to start emerging next month, this is the time I tend to turn my attention to the stalwarts of the forest.
This fungus has been used for thousands of years to start fires, craft tools and make clothing, and these days Fomes vomitarius is being studied for its potential ability to replace certain types of plastics. Fomes vomitarius is a perennial polypore fungus that develops hoof-shaped fruiting bodies on dead and dying hardwood trees, particularly beech and birch. Unlike many fungi that appear seasonally, this one grows year-round, continuously adding new layers annually. Over time, older specimens become large and multi-layered. One of the most valued properties of Fomes vomitarius is its ability to hold a slow-burning ember for hours when dried and processed into armadillo. This makes it an awesome fire-starting material, allowing people to transport fire over long distances. Armadillo played a huge role in blacksmithing, serving as a slow-burning fuel to ignite forge fires. Its remarkable flammability persists even in damp conditions, making it a reliable fire-starting material in challenging environments. Topically, the soft inner layer or armadillo was traditionally used as a poultice and even as a natural felt bandage on wounds, thanks to its absorbency and antiseptic qualities. Its upper surface is hard and woody, often displaying grey to brown concentric zones, while its underside is covered in tiny pores that release its spores. This underside changes from white to a dark brown as the fungus matures. The fruiting body comprises of 3 distinct layers: the outer crust, which is a hard protective surface, the middle layer, which is a soft foam-like material, and the hollow tubular structures forming the underside of the mushroom. The tubular structures of the pores are also a really useful material. When placed in a pool of fat or oil, they can act as a wick for a candle. It's believed that the Cro-Magnon people, early modern humans, used fungi like Fomes vomitarius as wicks for their fat lamps. These lamps were simple stone or shell vessels filled with animal fat, providing essential light in dark caves and shelters. Beneath the surface lies a soft, velvety layer known as armadillo. Armadillo is a spongy, flammable material derived from the middle, fleshy trauma layer of the Fomes vomitarius fungus. This layer is located between the hard, crust-like outer cuticle and the spore-bearing pore tubes on the underside of the fungus. With a texture similar to buckskin, this material was highly valued for crafting and survival purposes. Processed armadillo could be turned into felt-like material used to make hats, vests and other clothing items when leather was scarce. Even Otzi the Iceman, a 5,300-year-old mummy discovered in the Alps, carried pieces of Fomes vomitarius in his survival kit. Given that his knife contained traces of marcasite, a mineral similar to pyrite, it's likely that he used Fomes vomitarius as part of his flint and pyrite fire-starting kit. To prepare armadillo for fire starting, the inner trauma layer is sliced, scraped and fluffed to create a highly combustible material that catches sparks quickly. To extract the armadillo, you need to remove the tough outer cuticle by carefully scraping or cutting away the woody outer layer to expose the softer brown inner tissue. Next, you need to separate the pore tubes by pulling them apart. You can cut out the fibrous trauma, which can then be processed into armadillo for various applications. Traditional craftsmen in Romania made felted armadillo hats, which were believed to reduce sweating. And actually, the famous hat worn by mycologist Paul Stamets is made of armadillo too. The soft, absorbent properties of Fomes vomitarius made it an essential fungus in historical medicine. In ancient Greece, Hippocrates described Fomes vomitarius as a cauterization agent for wounds, using its charred tinder to stop bleeding. This use as a styptic earned its nickname surgeon's agaric, as dried armadillo was widely used by surgeons, dentists and podiatrists well into the 19th century. Surgeons applied it to wounds and surgical incisions to absorb blood and promote clotting, while dentists used it to dry teeth before placing fillings, similar to how cotton wool balls are used today. Podiatrists found it particularly useful for packing around ingrown toenails, reducing pressure and inflammation, and absorbing moistures in areas prone to infection. The Okanagan Colville tribes of North America brewed antimicrobial teas and poultices from it to treat infections and arthritis, and the Cree used it to treat frostbite. In the Ayurvedic medicine of India, it was employed as a diuretic, laxative, and as a nerve-calming tonic, while the Sami healers in northern Europe cauterized wounds with its embers. In some Siberian communities, smouldering Fomes vomitarius was also burned to ward off evil spirits and disease, and in traditional Chinese medicine it was taken for treating cancers of the throat, stomach and uterus. Foams from a terrace has been found to contain polysaccharide protein complexes, similar to those in turkey tail mushroom, as well as polysaccharides. Foams from a terrace is rich in terpenoids and other secondary metabolites. It often grows on birch trees, and because of this, the fungus concentrates birch-derived compounds like betulin and betulinic acid. Betulinic acid is a triterpenoid with documented antiviral, anti-cancer properties. Using foams from a terrace medicinally usually means making a tea or a tincture rather than eating it, as it's far too woody to chew. For a basic tea, you can slice a dried conch into pieces and simmer it in water for around half an hour to make a decoction. This slow heating breaks down the tough fibres and extracts the beneficial compounds, yielding a brownish herbal tea. For a stronger preparation, you can do a double extraction, brewing it in tea and also soaking it in alcohol, then combining the two. This method draws out both the water-soluble and the alcohol-soluble constituents. This fungus is widely spread and thrives in mature woodlands, preferring dead or dying birch, beech and oak trees. It plays a crucial role in wood decay and nutrient recycling, helping to break down dead wood and return its nutrients back into the ecosystem. Foams from a terrace is long-lived, with fruiting bodies persisting for several decades as they slowly decompose their host tree. It is primarily saprotrophic, meaning it feeds on dead wood, but it can also act as a weak parasite, infecting stressed or damaged trees before continuing its decay process after the tree dies. Researchers are exploring ways to cultivate this fungus, aiming to produce biodegradable materials that could replace certain plastic products, leading to more sustainable manufacturing processes and reducing reliance on fossil-based plastics. Daudinia concentrica, commonly known as coal fungus or King Alfred's cakes, is a saprobic fungus that forms hard, spherical fruiting bodies and can most often be found growing on dead and dying ash trees. The fruiting bodies start as reddish-brown, but mature into black charcoal-like structures with a rough, cracked surface. Coal fungus can be found all year round, gradually expanding with concentric growth layers. These rings are visible when cut open and provide insight into its age and growth patterns. Coal fungus is also an excellent natural tinder, but unlike foams from a terrace, which requires processing into almadou, coal fungus can be used almost as is. Its dense charcoal-like structure catches a spark easily and can sustain a slow burn, even in damp conditions. When ignited, it doesn't burst into flame, but instead smoulders steadily, allowing for controlled fire starting without the need for constant tending. Because of this, it was favoured by early firemakers as a way to transport embers safely, and is still the preferred method for many bushcrafters today. To prepare coal fungus for fire starting, choose mature specimens that feel dry and brittle. If the fungus is slightly damp, allow it to air dry or place it near a heat source to speed it up. A fully dried fruited body should be hard and feel lightweight like charcoal. Break the fungus into smaller pieces to expose the inner layers. Strike a spark onto the exposed surface using flint and steel, a ferrocerium rod or a magnifying glass on a sunny day. The fungus will catch a glow rather than producing a flame. Once glowing, gently blow on it to encourage smouldering and transfer the ember to dry tinder such as birch bark, dry grass or wood shavings. A piece of coal fungus can smoulder for a really long time, making it useful for carrying fire over long distances. Place the smouldering fungus in a fireproof container with airflow to keep it alight. It has a somewhat sweet and lingering scent when burned, and is a little reminiscent of toasted tea cakes. Its layered, brittle structure also means it breaks apart in a similar way to charcoal, and when ground into a powder and mixed with other materials, coal fungus could be used as a natural glue or black pigment, much like traditional charcoal powder.
According to folklore, in the 9th century, King Alfred of Wessex was on the run from Viking invaders after suffering a series of defeats. Seeking refuge, he disguised himself and took shelter in a local woman's home. This woman, unaware of his true identity, asked him to watch over her small loaves of bread while they baked on the fire. Distracted by thoughts of reclaiming his kingdom, Alfred let the loaves burn. When the woman returned and saw the charred remains, she gave him a proper telling off, unaware that she was speaking to the King of Wessex himself. The fungus Daudinia concentrica gets its common name King Alfred's cakes because of its resemblance to those burnt loaves.
Daudinia concentrica is a saprotrophic fungus. It colonises trees that are already weakened or dead, meaning its presence can indicate natural decay processes at work. In recent years, Daudinia concentrica has become more commonly observed due to the spread of ash dieback, a fungal disease devastating ash tree populations across Europe. Because Daudinia concentrica thrives on dead and dying ash trees, an increase in its presence in a woodland may be a sign of trees succumbing to the disease. As coal fungus works to break down dead wood, it helps to pave the way for other decomposers. Over time, different fungi, bacteria and invertebrates will continue the decomposition process, eventually turning dead trees into nutrient-rich soil. Observing its spread could help monitor the progression of the disease in certain areas, and because coal fungus grows in distinct concentric rings, each layer represents a season of growth, much like tree rings. Examining these layers in a mature fruiting body can sometimes reveal insights into past environmental conditions, such as periods of drought or rapid decay events following storm damage. Coal fungus also serves as an important microhabitat for woodland insects and invertebrates. As the fungus ages, the once hard fruiting bodies begin to dry out and become brittle. Cracks and cavities form in the structure, creating ideal hiding spots for insects such as beetles, woodlice and small spiders. The dense charcoal-like structure provides insulation, helping these creatures survive colder months when exposed wood might not offer as much protection. Larvae can be found burrowing into old coal fungus fruiting bodies, relying on these decomposing fungi to complete their life cycle, feeding on the remains and using it as a safe space to pupate. Small woodland predators such as certain species of bird and small mammals take advantage of the invertebrates living inside coal fungus. Artist bracket is a large perennial polypore fungus that grows in shelf-like tiers on trees. It has a hard, woody texture, and its upper surface is brown to greyish brown, often covered in a fine layer of spores which gives it a dusty appearance. The underside is pale white and bruises dark brown when scratched, hence the name artist bracket, as people have long used it to etch drawings. The fruiting body is firm and hoop-shaped with a thick rounded edge and can grow to massive sizes. The pore surface underneath is made up of tiny, densely packed pores, sometimes as many as 6 to 8 per millimetre. Artist bracket is primarily a saprotrophic fungus, meaning that it feeds on dead wood rather than weakening living trees. Once established, it can persist for many years, with new layers forming on top of older ones, giving it a stacked or tiered appearance. It thrives in damp, shaded environments and can be found all year round, but it's particularly noticeable at this time of year. Artist bracket is a common sight in woodlands and parks, growing mainly on deciduous trees like beech, oak and willow. Artist bracket grows on older, mature trees rather than young saplings or recently dead wood, so if you're trying to navigate towards older, less disturbed forests, perhaps you're looking for certain species of fungi or tracking wildlife, then spotting multiple large brackets on standing dead trees suggests you're in a mature woodland rather than secondary regrowth. The artist bracket is associated with protection, divination and messages from the forest. It was believed that the spirits of the woods used this fungus as a writing tablet, leaving signs and omens etched into its soft white underside. If a forager or woodsman found one of these unusual markings, it was thought to be a message from the unseen world, a warning or blessing, depending on the shapes revealed. In Slavic folklore, large bracket fungi like this were considered forest guardians, believed to grow in ancient trees that had housed spirits for centuries. Cutting them down without good reason was seen as inviting misfortune, as they were thought to hold the wisdom of the tree that they grew upon. Ethnobotanical records indicate that decoctions were taken to treat lung and respiratory complaints and as a diuretic. It was also used as an immune system tonic, and large conchs even found use in ceremonial healing rituals and protective charms. The fungus was sometimes burned, the smoke believed to ward off evil or illness, and the smoke from a burning artist bracket also repels insects too. Ganoderma applanatum has got a couple of lookalikes, mostly within the Ganoderma genus and other hard woody polypores. The main fungus that gets misidentified as artist bracket is the southern bracket, Ganoderma australe. It's very similar in shape and colour to Ganoderma applanatum and can sometimes be almost identical. Like the artist bracket, southern bracket is also found on broadleaf trees, but is more likely to be a weak parasite than Ganoderma applanatum. You will often find southern bracket growing on living trees. It also has larger pores and spores and a thicker white outer crust. If you notice deformed holes or raised bumps on the underside of an artist bracket fungus, then this is a really good indicator that you are indeed looking at Ganoderma applanatum, because these deformities are caused by the larvae of the yellow flat-footed fly, a species that exclusively parasitizes the artist bracket. One of the most well-studied effects of artist bracket is its role as an immunomodulator. Polysaccharides from this fungus can stimulate the immune system, enhancing the activity of macrophages, T cells and natural killer cells that defend the body. Regular consumption as a tonic is said to bolster resilience to illness and improve overall immune resilience. Due to its woody and indigestible texture, artist bracket is not eaten like a regular mushroom. Instead, it must be prepared into extracts to release its beneficial compounds. Artist bracket can be dried and milled into a fine powder. This can then be encapsulated or mixed into smoothies or coffees or whatever foods you're making. This powder will provide fibre and some nutrients, but it's important to note that raw powder is poorly absorbed because the mushroom's tough cell walls are made of chitin and lock away the compounds. Often powdered products are actually extract powders, meaning the mushroom was extracted with hot water and sometimes alcohol and then dehydrated to a powder. An easy way to harvest some of these benefits is by making a decoction or a tea, and is the most common way to consume artist bracket for medicinal purposes. Slices or pieces of the dried conch are simmered in water for around 20 minutes up to an hour to make a strong tea. A hot water extraction is particularly effective for drawing out the polysaccharides and some phenolics. The resultant tea is dark and bitter, sometimes described as having a smoky or earthy flavour. In traditional Chinese use, Ganoderma applanatum was often boiled with other herbs or in soups, for example simmered with ginger to improve the taste and synergize effects. Because the raw flesh of artist bracket is hard and corky, making a tea softens it and transfers the actives into the liquid. You can boil the same piece of mushroom many times or make a large batch to extract all that goodness. You can even make a concentrated broth that can be stored in the fridge for a few days. Decoctions or teas are considered cooling and nourishing, and they have a slightly sweeter taste than an alcohol tincture because they carry more of the mild sweet polysaccharides and fewer of those bitter terpenes. The artist bracket can be prepared for external use too. A strong tea can serve as a wash for skin conditions, making use of those antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties for eczema or wounds. Infusing the mushroom in oil over a low heat for a long time can yield a medicinal oil that can be incorporated into balms or creams.